we have to get to. I'm going to be visiting with Wire Point's Ted Dabrowski here, hopefully soon. And then I do want to talk about the scumbag of the year. The scumbag of the year. So, this is a coach, and this is a really heavy lifting story I have to give you this morning. It's been making its rounds, it's going viral because it's just so odd that nobody caught this guy prior to him raping 20 for 20 years, unconscious boys, for 20 years. And then finally, the way they caught this guy was after he left a phone at a restaurant. So he's been raping unconscious boys for 20 years. Nobody knew. But finally, we found his phone, I guess, at a restaurant he left, and they were trying to figure out whose phone it was, and then they were sifting through it, and then they found a plethora of evidence. So I'm going to get to the scumbag of the year, this coach who's been raping unconscious boys, and this is out of Franklin, Tennessee. Now, next, lunatic, a complete lunatic, interrupts Vivek Ramaswamy at this event in Iowa. How he handled it should be studied by the other GOP candidates, by the other presidential candidates. How he handled this in Iowa was stunning. And then a little bit later, of course, and I'm sorry I have to do this to you, Megan Rapinoe, she's lashing out at Dave Chappelle, of all people, and she says that his verbal violence is to blame for protecting girls' sports. So, we had a case here in Springfield, the YMCA. They're coming out and they're denying that they had kicked this girl off. We're going to find out more on Thursday. There's supposed to be some sort of press conference done with the Illinois Freedom Caucus down in Springfield. But it was a 16-year-old girl, and she was in the locker room, and she claimed that she was getting undressed in front of a male, and she was very uncomfortable by that, expressed that. And then she said because she expressed her being uncomfortable around a man in a girl's locker room, they kicked her off from the team. They kicked her off from the swim team. So we're going to be talking about Megan Rapinoe, how she's lashing out at Dave Chappelle. It's quite odd. But joining me right now, Ted Dabrowski. Ted, how you doing this morning?
I'm doing great, Kat. Good morning. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing just fine and dandy. We have so much to get through today. One thing that I do want to talk about, and I want to know if you've heard of anything, the Chicago Police Union coming out and denying that, or not really denying, but questioning the legitimacy of this allegation made by this minor migrant girl. Have you heard of this story where she says that she's gotten pregnant by a Chicago police officer, and the Chicago Police Union has come out and said, "Hey, we are questioning the legitimacy here because of this new provision in the Safety Act where if you lodge a complaint against a police officer specifically, then you don't have to sign an affidavit. You don't have to sign anything that hey, I attest that this is valid. Here's my signature. You can just do this all anonymously." So I wanted to gauge your thoughts about the Safety Act. Where is that at? And have you heard about this story coming out of Chicago? Ted Dabrowski, president of WirePoints.
Hey, Kat, I have heard of the story. I saw it in the headlines. I haven't investigated or looked into it in detail, so I'm not aware of the details. But you're absolutely right about one thing, and that was a huge concern for us about the Safety Act and about the way the laws have been changing, where they're making it easier and easier for people to throw allegations at police without a signed affidavit. And so it just opens up. If we talk about bad police morale today, I mean, if that thing goes through, think about how dangerous it is for a cop to do anything, because they can always be hit with accusations that they can't defend. It's a really horrible, dangerous thing, and I understand some people's intentions of it. They're worried that the people aren't speaking up against the police, but by the same token, you destroy the value of accusations and proof of accusations if you don't require somebody to sign what they said, what they're accusing people of. So it's a very dangerous, horrific thing, in my opinion.
And Another thing I wanted to talk about today, Jenny Thornley. I saw you guys had put this out. Judgment entered against Jenny Thornley, but still no action on the alleged involvement of Pritzker's office in this fraudulent workers' comp claim. And I know this is kind of convoluted. Can you sum it up for our listeners? This Jenny Thornley, she was a former state employee, former campaign worker of Governor J.B. Pritzker, and this workers' comp claim, but it was not a workers' comp claim. It was fraudulent.
Right. Yeah. So this is Jenny Thornley, right? Yeah. Former state employee in a state police office. She ends up suing her boss, this guy named Jack Garcia, for sexual harassment. And as part of that sexual harassment, she ends up making a workers' comp claim, right? So she says, I'm eligible for money for pain and suffering due to what happened at work. Well, eventually, $500,000 is spent by an independent investigation to find out that there was no proof or no basis for a harassment claim, which was then separately again proved that there was no harassment claim. So that was dropped. And yet, even though the harassment claim was found not to be true, she was still allowed to get her workers' comp claims. And the way she did that, she reached out to allegedly reached out to Pritzker's wife, and eventually the Pritzker administration helped her get that claim. And so, in theory, well, if that harassment never happened, then she should be able to make a claim, a workers' comp claim. And so then what the heck was the governor's office doing getting engaged in a workers' comp claim that shouldn't be paid? And why isn't anybody asking those questions? And so Kwame Raoul, Attorney General, has apparently decided not to look into it. When they've been questioned, they're smug about it, Pritzker and Raoul. And so a few of us are keeping this thing alive because it's real. It should, there should be lots of questions asked of Governor Pritzker and his administration. Nobody's asking them, but they're sitting there waiting to be asked by serious media, the unserious media.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, the media isn't covering this, and if this was a fraudulent, this is all on taxpayer dime, right? So she's
it's on taxpayer dime, and of course, that the one part was $500,000, but it's more, much more than just the $500,000. It's just it's alleged fraud. There's something going on, and if there's not something going on, then it should be clarified. But based on the facts that have been provided in the court cases and in the various press, there's something going on, and until it's cleared up, then it needs to be we need to continue to ask the questions.
Now, one thing that I did also want to talk about with you this morning, Ted Dabrowski, we're talking with Ted Dabrowski from WirePoints. States across the country, they are cutting taxes, but Illinois isn't. So not even with the highest on record budget revenues. And I say this all of the time. Illinois has a spending problem. It's not a revenue problem. And this is clear. Can you parse through this data? What does it look like when we compare to other states in the nation? 24 states, including every Illinois neighbor, cut their income taxes permanently, but not Illinois.
Yeah, so this is a big deal. I think everybody recognizes that lower taxes is if you can provide good services with lower taxes and have a high growing economy. Because there's two ways to try to grow your taxes. One is to keep raising your rates. You'll get more money, but you'll chase away people over time. Right? You'll chase away businesses, you'll chase away people, or you can attract people who come in and do lots of business, and there's a lot of economic growth. And that's what a lot of states are figuring out. Places like Florida, Texas, well, they have zero income tax rates. They don't have a tax on income. They're booming. The people are coming in. Same thing with Tennessee. These are zero tax states. So other states are saying, hey, we need to compete on that. So you've had, since 2021, you've had 24 states cut taxes permanently, and I'm talking about income taxes. 8 states can't cut because they're already at zero, right? So you got really states that are getting more and more competitive. And you look at Illinois' neighbors, and that's where it becomes really obvious how we're falling behind. Our neighbors have dramatically cut rates. Let me just pull up the rates here. So Iowa is cutting their progressive tax to a flat tax, and it'll be 3.9% in 2026. Ours is 4.95%. So Iowa is going below us. Michigan is going to 4.05%, already lower than us. Indiana's cutting to 3.15%. Kentucky's cutting to 4.5%. So all of our neighbors are cutting. And what it is that, with all that COVID money, there's so much money. Many states find themselves structurally with a ton of money. And they said, we're going to give it back to taxpayers, not Illinois. If anything, they're still talking about tax hikes around here.
Mm. Yeah, well, and why do you think that is? I'm just going to take a stab in the dark. Is it because we're trying to fund all of these public unions? Being that we have Amendment 1 out there, they can literally demand anything at this point, and they can demand, hey, I want you to pay us $1 million, right? I know that's extreme, $1 million per employee for this job. It's a public union. And I mean, when you have the public unions running things like the Chicago Teachers Union running things here in the state of Illinois, of course, the money is never going to run dry for these people. They want to line their pockets. They want to line their pensions. So that's where I think, it is just a money pit because we're constantly funneling money through these public unions because they have there is no bargaining. There is no negotiations. They just get whatever they want. So they can keep going back to Governor J.B. Pritzker and saying, hey, this is how much money we want.
Oh, no, you've nailed it. You've said it twice today. Today you nailed it twice. You said we have a spending problem, not a revenue problem. That's absolutely correct. We just spend more and more. And number two, it's the unions, it's the public sector unions. Look, when you look at Governor Pritzker, he doesn't respond to what people want. He responds to what the unions want, AFSCME and all the different SEIU, all the different unions. And it's even worse with Brandon Johnson because he is the union, he is CTU. And so when you look at the state, when you look at the guaranteed pensions in the Constitution, now when you look at Amendment 1 with all these guaranteed rights to negotiate and to demand, the ordinary person has no power compared to the unions. So the unions will, like you said, if they want more money, a big thing that they're pushing for right now in Chicago is affordable housing. The teachers union is pushing for affordable housing. So what does affordable housing have to do with education and teachers? But they want affordable housing in Chicago and primarily for poor students. But that's how far it goes to where they're just demanding tax hikes for everything. And unsurprisingly, other states are lowering taxes. Unsurprisingly, we're not lowering taxes. And I hate to be negative, but it can only point to more people leaving Illinois because the other states become more competitive. If we don't even if we don't raise taxes, as long as we keep them the same, we're getting less competitive because the other states are lowering them. So when you take into account the crime, the education, and the many things we complain about in Illinois, and then put on top of that, you got to pay more for it. No, thank you.
Well, and the Chicago police and fire pensions, right? So everybody else is getting a piece of this pie, but I feel like the Chicago police and fire pensions are heavily underfunded. So you have all of this money, right? I don't know where we compare as far as, we have the highest revenue probably in all of our neighboring states. Is that a accurate statement there, Ted?
Well, we're more wealthy. When you take the Chicago suburbs and all that, we have higher incomes overall than many parts of the country.
Mm-hmm. So many parts of the country,
we don't have low tax rates. We have high tax rates, so we have lots of money. Yes.
Yeah, lots of money, lots of revenue coming in. Why are the Chicago police and fire pensions so heavily underfunded? You would think that we could at least fund some of our other, like the unions, the Chicago Police Union, right? Are these pensions, why are they so underfunded?
Well, you've got the whole mess of Chicago and the state. Just all the pensions are horribly funded. The Chicago police and the Chicago municipal workers they've got about 20% of the money they should have in their account. So they're effectively broke. That just ties back into all the problems of Chicago. They've preferred to hand out bigger and bigger raises rather than fund pensions. And that creates a problem twice. When you don't fund pensions, the pension fund gets less healthy. But when you also give bigger raises, then the amount you owe in pensions in the future gets bigger. So it's a double whammy. And this has gone on in Chicago. It's gone on across the state. And then not only that, but the benefits have been too big. and and taxpayers have been able to keep up with the requirements. It's just when you start handing out money the way we've talked about here in Illinois, um, there's choices to be made, and taxpayers are getting hammered, but it's still not enough to cover the ballooning. We got the most units of government in the country. We have too many government employees. Their benefits are too big. The state workers get free retiree health care if they work for 20 years. I could go on and on about all the benefits they get, and that's why it's unaffordable. And again, if you can't pay for it, taxpayers leave because they don't want to pay all these taxes.
Well, let's talk about that here. The Illinois state worker, you said government employees. Let's talk about oh gosh, it's the municipal employees, right? It's AFSCME. That's the union, and what this is one of the largest, if not the largest, public union in the state of Illinois. Basically, it's all the municipal workers, right?
Yeah, all the state, county employees.
So tell me about these negotiations when we're talking about Amendment 1 and, these public unions being able to demand whatever they want. I know wirepoints.org. We're talking with Ted Dabrowski. He's the president of Wirepoints. I know you guys did a lot of work going through the negotiations here, which really wasn't much of a negotiation, right? It's all JB. It's JB Pritzker just kind of bending the knee to this union, this SCME union. So what were some of the things that were like in the negotiations that were bad?
Well, so this time around, we know nothing. It's been in. So here's the problem with Illinois law. Here's another benefit that we just talked about for the unions. The unions get to negotiate with the government in secret. It's all done in the dark. It's not done out in the public. So the taxpayers have no seat at the negotiation table. So it's just the Pritzker's team and the unions, and they decide. And only once they've agreed and everything is done, then they'll tell the taxpayers when it's too late. So we have no idea what just happened right now. 4 years ago, we had a much better idea. We were able to FOIA, the Rauner team before Pritzker talks came on. We learned all kinds of stuff about, they get this free retire. The state workers get free retiree health care, so they can retire, for example, in their 50s before Medicare kicks in. They can retire in their 50s, and the state will cover their health care for them free. And this happens a lot. And so we found out about that. We found out about how the state workers have the second highest state salaries in the country. So they've negotiated that. Of course, they've got the guaranteed pensions. State workers also get Social Security. So they get all these benefits. And, we added it all up, and that was 4 years ago. And, the average compensation for a state worker was $110,000. So the sad part is that this negotiation, we know nothing. We will only find out how much this is going to cost taxpayers after the fact. But what we do know is that everybody's happy. Pritzker's happy. The unions are happy. So they had a much easier negotiation time. And, it's just going to cost taxpayers more, and unions will get what they want.
Yeah, and you bring up their worker salary. Now, how does that compare to the Illinois worker or earnings? I've got the graph pulled up here. And like you said, you pulled from the Rauner years because we don't know what's going on today with Governor J.B. Pritzker negotiating with these state workers. But in the Rauner years, 2005 to 2015, how do our Illinois worker earnings compare to the state union?
The state was saying, here's the other big thing about the unions that you discussed. Union workers have guaranteed contracts, and in guaranteed contracts, they have guaranteed raises, they have guaranteed everything, and they have a path for getting automatic raises. So I don't have that graphic in front of me now, but the unions over those 10, 15 years, their salaries grew lots faster than the private sector, which has seen little growth in the past until only recently.
And it was up to 43%. So the growth in those 10 years from 2005 to 2015, they're up 43%. You compare that to the average Illinois worker, that's up 11% over the course of those 10 years. Yeah. So it's like
so 4 times faster growth.
Yeah, I mean, wouldn't it be nice if your salary increased 43% within 10 years? You're making double of what you started out at. I mean, that's essentially what they're projecting at over the course of 10 years. So it'll be interesting. after the fact,
Mhm.
what we see here with the public unions.
Well, I think that's what we have to look forward to one day when we ever get change is to get real growth in our economy. Wall Street Journal put out a piece, I think it was yesterday, or anyway, there's new data showing how again personal incomes and earnings in Texas and Florida are much faster than what's happening in Illinois. And again, if you get a vibrant economy, it takes care of a lot of things for people, right? You don't need government in the way. What you need to do is get government out of the way so that businesses can thrive, people can find work and do what they want to do, keep their money, invest their money, be entrepreneurial. That's what you're seeing in places like Tennessee and in Florida and Texas. And you don't see that here. It's the opposite. And eventually we'll make a change here in Illinois. But right now, the way Pritzker and others are running it, we don't have that. And we're stuck in this 2-3 decade problem that I hope one day we'll see change.
Ted Dabrowski, we are getting close to a break, but thanks so much for joining me here on the Morning Buzz. And folks, don't miss anything that wirepoints.org puts out there because they're doing the work. Ted, how can we find out more about wirepoints.org and how can we help you?
Yeah. I appreciate it. Please, in order to get change in Illinois, we're going to have a lot more people know the facts and then challenge what goes on here. So please go to wirepoints.org. You can sign up for a daily newsletter there. You have a little pop-up, but please sign up and please get more people to join because the more people that understand what's happening, the better off we'll be. So wirepoints.org and on social media at wirepoints.
Wonderful. Ted, you have a great rest of your day. Folks, we are going to be back. You won't even believe this. The Department of Justice erasing content from their webpage on child sex trafficking. Does it have to? It's kind of a coincidence that they deleted all of this. And it coincides here with the recent release of that film, The Sound of Freedom. I've got more ahead here on the Morning Buzz. You can text me at 309-451-9299. Hey, good morning. Thanks so much for tuning in. If you are watching the live stream, go ahead, smash that like button. We are going to be getting to the DOJ removing content from their webpage, from their official webpage. What kind of content did they exactly remove? Well, they removed things that dealt with child sex trafficking, and it highlighted the plight of international sex trafficking of minors. So when did they delete this? They deleted this in May 12th, 2023. That was when they erased these few sections. It's called the International Sex Trafficking of Minors, Domestic Sex Trafficking of Minors, and Child Victims of Prostitution. So the web page belongs to the criminal division of the DOJ. And what it does, it outlines subject areas of the department's child exploitation and obscenity services and what they focus on. It was previously updated under the Trump administration on May 28th of 2020. So there's all kinds of things that they took out. One form of trafficking, sex trafficking, involves the cross-border transportation of children. In these situations, traffickers recruit and transfer children across international borders in order to sexually exploit them in another country. Explains the now deleted description of international sex trafficking. So they deleted this part from the website. I'm going to share it here in the comments. Can you believe this? Our DOJ is deleting things from their website that explain what international human sex trafficking is. Why are they doing that? Why did they delete it prior to the release of Sound of Freedom? Why are they deleting it amidst Joe Biden's continued incitement of mass migration via the American border, the southern border? This is a prime avenue for child sex trafficking. And I don't think that the website taking all of this down is a coincidence. They also took down this. The traffickers can be individuals working alone, organized crime groups, enterprises, or networks of criminals working together to traffic children into prostitution across country lines. It continues. This form of sex trafficking is a problem in the United States and recovered victims originate from all over the world, including less developed areas such as South and Southeast Asia, Central America, South America, and to more developed areas like Western Europe. Once in the United States, a child may be trafficked to any or multiple states in the country. The United States not only faces a problem of foreign victims trafficked into the United States, but there is also a homegrown problem of American children being recruited and exploited for commercial sex. So then it goes into pimps, traffickers here domestically. Pimps and traffickers sexually exploit children through prostitution, adult nightclubs, illegal brothels, sex parties, motel rooms, hotel rooms, and other locations in the United States. If you don't think that there are illegal brothels running here in Bloomington Normal, then you don't know what point of the movie you are in. Okay, it's very hard to prove that these are illegal brothels a lot of the time because these women and or children cannot speak English and they are scared to speak out. So the section that was deleted, that I went through all of that for you here on the Morning Buzz. Now, there is a section of child sex trafficking which remains on the Biden administration's version of the DOJ website. The following paragraph here was erased, which is concerning. I'm going to throw this paragraph up into the comments section and read it here for you. The DOJ erasing things like the child sex trafficking um, definition, the international child sex trafficking definition from their website. So this is interesting that they deleted this part from the website. Whoa. I woke up this morning, a friend sent this to me, and my jaw dropped. The DOJ has removed international sex trafficking of minors from their website. So there was an entire section dedicated on the DOJ website, the Department of Justice. They had details about what child sex trafficking is, what international sex trafficking of minors is, but now they took it all down from their website as of late May. So this was prior to the release of the movie Sound of Freedom. I don't know if you've seen it yet, but this is a stunning revision that comes amidst scrutiny of President Joe Biden and his continued incitement of mass migration via the American southern border, the southern Mexico US southern border. This is a prime avenue for child sex trafficking. There is a reason why the DOJ has taken down from their website definitions, explanations of international sex trafficking of minors. They don't want people to know that this exists and that it's a big problem in the United States. They don't want you to know that the United States is the number one consumer of child sex trafficking. The DOJ, on their webpage, they used to have three sections. International sex trafficking of minors. They detailed what that was on the website. Then they also deleted a section called domestic sex trafficking of minors. Then they deleted another section called child victims of prostitution. So the web page actually belongs here to the DOJ, the criminal division of the DOJ. Now, this was all updated under the Trump administration, May 28th, 2020. So Trump updated the website. Now they've taken all of this down. So I'm going to read to you some things they've taken off of the website. Quote, here's something they've taken off of the website. One form of sex trafficking involves the cross-border transportation of children. In these situations, traffickers recruit and transfer children across the international borders in order to sexually exploit them in another country. This is the now deleted description of international sex trafficking that they have taken down from their website. It goes on. The traffickers can be individuals working alone, organized crime groups, enterprises, a network of criminals working together to traffic children into prostitution across the country and across country lines. It goes on. This is also deleted. This form of sex trafficking is a problem in the United States, and recovered victims originate from all over the world, including less developed areas such as South and Southeast Asia, Central America, South America, and more developed areas. That's where a lot of these victims come from, Western Europe. Once in the United States, a child may be trafficked to any or multiple states in the country. So they're just going from state to state to state. They took all of this down, folks, from the website. And this is very important. They took down the child victims of prostitution part. So there's things here that happen in America where children are being recruited and exploited for commercial sex domestically. So it's not the United States is not only facing the problem of foreign victims being trafficked into the country, but we have a very real homegrown problem of American children being recruited for commercial sex. So, pimps and traffickers sexually exploiting children through street prostitution, nightclubs, illegal brothels, sex parties, motel rooms, hotel rooms, and other locations throughout the United States. This was all deleted off of the DOJ website prior to Sound of Freedom being released. This is a big problem. And my question to you this morning is why? Why would they delete definitions, explanations of international child sex trafficking from from a website? Why would they do that? Go ahead, text me at 309-451-9299 your thoughts on why they would do something like this. Now, I do want to end the segment here with a happy note. I came across this story across the desk this morning, and her name is Sharon, and she lives in Scotland. And she has created a special bond with a family of foxes by feeding them every morning in her garden for the past 25 years. So she knows each member of the family, of the fox family, and she believes she's now giving food to the fourth generation of this fox family. So she's been friendly with this fox family so long that she remembers feeding their great grandparents. So, I mean, this is incredible. She has been feeding this entire family of foxes for years. And the interaction Sharon has with the foxes puts a smile on her face every day, and she also makes the foxes happy. And Sharon offers the foxes sausages every morning. I mean, these guys eat well. The foxes also have leftover pizza, eggs, Chinese food, and chicken legs. They eat very well. Sharon says that the foxes are very friendly and showed the appreciation their appreciation for all of the food once in a while when they leave her gifts like mice at the doorstep. So our cats used to do that. I'm a big fan of foxes. I like how they're kind of a blend of a cat and a dog. I've seen a family of foxes before. Never have I gotten close to one. They are wild animals, so but maybe because they've got all kinds of leftover pizza in their belly, they're domesticated. Who knows? But Sharon, out of Scotland, she has been feeding generation after generation after generation of this fox family. I will be back. We've got a few things I've got to run through today. One thing I do want to talk about this lunatic interrupting Vivek Ramaswamy at this event in Iowa. And I want to talk about how Vivek handled it. And I think that the GOP presidential candidates need to take note of this. And this needs to be studied, this interaction he had with this lunatic who interrupted his event. Hey, thanks so much for joining me here on the live stream. If you are watching, please smash the like button. I like how I've got some comments rolling in here. I saw Sound of Freedom yesterday. It was excellent. It was very well done. Good crowd. So I watched it on July 4th, and I will continue to say this about the movie Sound of Freedom. The little girl in the beginning of the film, she starts banging on like a little drum. She starts singing, and she's free at this point. And then she's recruited by some sort of celebrity into this child acting situation. And she thinks that she's auditioning for some sort of role with her brother. And then the father drops them off for some sort of audition. He comes back and they're gone. Poof, gone. And they have been trafficked out of the country they were in. And the little boy was being trafficked into the United States via the US Mexico border. And fortunately, we had Tim Ballard working on pedophiles here in the United States. He was working on catching them. And there's a point in the movie where Tim Ballard he is asked the question, "How many pedophiles have you gotten off of the street today?" And he goes, "About 200." Then the guy asks a follow-up question and he says, "Well, how many children have you saved?" And he goes silent in the film. And then that leads Tim Ballard to try to befriend this pedophile to get this pedophile to trust him. I don't know how people do that. I would not have the strength to be nice to a pedophile, even if I was undercover and there was an ultimate goal, I wouldn't be able to do it. I just wouldn't. And he gains the trust of this pedophile to the point where this pedophile that he is working on booking and cuffing, right, and arresting, he's gained the trust of this person to get him a child, like a real life child. And he makes a couple of calls and he makes it happen to where this kid is being trafficked over the US Mexico border. And they apprehend the trafficker and they get the little boy. But the kids, they were separated. So he got the little boy, but the little boy was saying that he no longer was with his little sister anymore and that he had a little sister and he had no idea where she was. So then it's a tale of heroism in the movie Sound of Freedom. And Tim Ballard just goes on this mission to Cambodia, to, the sex island. He does like a sting where he recovers like 60 children in this human trafficking operation. It's called the Underground Railroad Operation. He was part of the US government. I guess he was like some sort of fed, but the US government said, because it's international, we're not going to do anything about this. You're on your own. So he quits his job and yeah, I mean, I'm explaining it. You guys can look it up on the Wikipedia page. And if you haven't watched it yet, I feel like I'm giving away some spoilers, but this is important because it shows you how the pedophiles are connected to the human trafficking. They're consuming the content, right? And I do have a story coming up. Scumbag of the Year. He's a coach, and I don't know how he was able to do this. For 20 years, this guy was raping unconscious boys for 20 years. He was raping them, and he was only found out after leaving a phone at a restaurant. So I'm gonna get to this guy here. Campos is his name, Camilo Campos, and he's um, in Nashville police custody today because they found all kinds of a plethora of evidence on a phone that he left in a restaurant. So I'm going to be talking about that. Megan Rapinoe lashing out at Dave Chappelle. I guess we should all hate Dave Chappelle now because he commits the crime of verbal violence. And if you're watching, go ahead, smash the like button and let me know in the comments, what is verbal violence and does it exist? Does it exist? We will be back with all of that and more ahead on the Morning Buzz. Justice Sonia Sotomayor. Oh, well, I wish I could say I was shocked. I'm not shocked. A lot of times, this is what Democrats do. They take your money and they leverage it. So we have Justice Sonia Sotomayor. She's leveraging taxpayer funded travel to promote her books. So she's got a memoir out there. She's got a couple of children's books, and they've all earned her like $3.7 million. And she's just joined the court, like, in 2009. Well, she joined the court in 2009, that was a while ago, but she's been using, taxpayer money, and she's leveraged, taxpayer-funded travel to promote her books. So she earns a salary of $285,000 per year over that because she gets all kinds of sweet deals like travel. But other justices have also earned additional income through their literary deals. No other justices come close to Sotomayor, which raised some ethical concerns within the Supreme Court. This, folks, this is the Associated Press. So here we have a Supreme Court justice. Her staffers have repeatedly used taxpayer funded court staff, performing tasks to prod public institutions for the justice's book ventures, which have garnered her millions of dollars of extra income. This is a really scumbaggy thing to do. Speaking of scumbags, there's a few things I want to run through here in the 7 o'clock hour. I'm getting close to a break here. Scumbag of the Year award. Now, the voting is going to be kept open until December, but I think we have our winner for 2023 Scumbag of the Year. If there's a candidate worse than this guy who raped minors over the course of 2 decades and walked away with the evidence, like has walked around, he didn't walk away, he finally got booked here, but he's walked around with evidence on his phone for 20 plus years. And look, if there's a candidate worse than this guy, I'm going to be setting my computer on fire. I don't think I could handle somebody worse than this guy. He's a coach and he's been raping unconscious boys for 20 years. Now, it was only found out after he left his cell phone at a restaurant and people were trying to figure out whose cell phone it was, who to call to come pick up the cell phone. But what they found was deeply disturbing. I've got that story. Also, Vivek Ramaswamy, he was interrupted by this lunatic, a far leftist, at this Iowa event. Now, Vivek Ramaswamy handled this in a way that I was like, how could you just like be so kind to this person? But this lunatic interrupts Vivek, and I think that the GOP presidential candidates, they need to take note of what's going on here, because the way Vivek handles this woman is genius. Also, Megan Rapinoe, I'm sorry I have to do this to you. She's lashing out at Dave Chappelle, and she claims that his verbal violence is to blame for, people wanting to speak out and protect girls' sports. So we have the Illinois Freedom Caucus actually here down in Springfield. What they're going to be doing here come tomorrow at 1 p.m. is a press conference with this 16-year-old girl and her family. This poor 16-year-old girl has went through hell, has been nixed from her swim team because she spoke out against some trans policies surrounding locker rooms at the YMCA in Springfield. So the YMCA in Springfield allows biological men, to change in front of minor girls in the girls' locker room. And this little girl, 16 years old, took issue with that. She made it known that she took an issue with that. She made posters. She told people she did not like this. And what was what happened to the 16-year-old girl? She was nixed from her swim team. She was, fired, right? She was taken off of her swim team for this. Now, of course, the YMCA is denying this. They say that, no, she was never kicked off of her swim team. She just left voluntarily. Okay. So I've got more of that ahead. Megan Rapinoe lashing out at Dave Chappelle. She's retiring, I guess, now, folks, and she's not going away. And she's not going to go quiet. Of course she's not. I'll be back. This is the Morning Buzz. All right, folks. Hey, this is the Morning Buzz. Thanks so much for tuning in to the live stream. If you're watching right now, go ahead, smash that like button. I'm going to get to your comments here. Jacqueline, I wonder if they had an influx of inquiries since the release of the film. Forget the politicians for a minute. If the common citizen slash voter or voter doesn't draw a line when it comes to children, they have no boundaries either. Why are they so loyal to a party that not only downplays the horror, but actually advocates for it? Yeah, well, the DOJ removing definitions surrounding international sex trafficking of children from their official website ran by the criminal division. This is not even just, I like how you put it here, Jacqueline. You said, why are they so loyal to a party that not only downplays the horror, but actually advocates for it and then hides the fact that they advocate for it? I would take it a step further. What these people are doing is they're not only advocating for it, they're not just downplaying the horror of child sex trafficking, they're advocating for it. Then, on top of that, they advocate for it and then they hide the fact that they advocate for it. Um, so, yeah, uh, Jacqueline, thanks so much for tuning in and commenting. I'm glad that you got to see the movie here, and I'm glad you got to see the movie. Highly recommend you go see Sound of Freedom. There's a reason why it's grossing well over $40 million. Now, there's a few things I do want to get to this morning. Other than the Mayor, I can't believe that she's leveraging taxpayer-funded travel to promote her book. So she's going around traveling the world promoting her book, making all kinds of money. Meanwhile, it's all on your dime. But that's pretty par for the course when it comes to Democrats and Democrat justices and politicians. They'll continue to do that. Now, one thing I was kind of concerned about, we have this amazing senator. She is a rising star in the Republican Party. And she says that she's heard some whispers here about um, possibly the Ukrainian parliament asking Americans to pay $200 every single day towards a mercenary army. So this congresswoman, she says that Ukraine wants every American to pay $200 per day to fund a mercenary army. This mercenary army would look similar to what Russia's got. It's a Wagner group. They're saying that after Russia leaves Crimea, which is where their head is at, they're going to potentially privatize and create a mercenary army similar to the Wagner group. Now, um, they not only demand that Americans pay $200 every single day, every American in this country, because it's our obligation according to Ukraine, so that they can defend the Western world from Russia, but they are also saying that they want F-35s. Now, this is all according to uh, Anna Paulina. She is a rising star in the Republican Party. She says that she has on good authority that they are looking at a mercenary group. She was on the War Room. I'm going to play her comments here coming up in just a bit. Um, Not only are they highly dangerous for civilians and children, there is a potential that these will be unexploded ordnance. That these will be unexploded ordnance, and there will be a massive demining effort afterwards. So here we're talking got, about Joe Biden sending these cluster bombs, which is a big deal. We're giving them cluster bombs because they don't have enough munitions. So I'm going to be playing Paulina here, in just a little bit on the War Room. I love this. NATO, they pushed Zelensky into committing a summer offensive that ended in disaster that his own military commanders disavowed, knowing full well that NATO membership for Ukraine was never on the table. So they pushed him into doing the summer offensive. And at the end of the day, Zelensky is peeved off, according to this blistering statement. I'm going to get to this statement, but he's lashing out after he was rejected by NATO again. And they pushed him into this summer offensive. Now, it was supposed to be a spring offensive, and we knew that was never going to happen. But here we have Zelensky. He's all peeved off. They pushed him into this summer offensive, which turned into a complete disaster. And his own military commanders knew that this was going to be a disaster. And they did it anyway, at the behest of NATO, because they thought they were going to get NATO membership for Ukraine. And that was never on the table, folks. Now, this story, and she has on good authority, I suppose, that Ukraine wants Americans to pay $200 per day to fund what's called a mercenary army. And that would be similar to Russia's Wagner Group. Russia's Wagner Group, you guys remember what was going on there. I've got the clip here of Anna Paulina and what she talks about as far as this $200 per day that you're going to have to pay to Ukraine. And she says that the Ukrainian parliament is all for it. I'll be back on the other side. Oh, thanks so much, Jim. I appreciate you listening. We will be back. Like I said, Ukraine wants us to pay $200 a day to try to fund this mercenary army. It's similar to Russia's Wagner Group. Now, they're saying that after Russia leaves Crimea, which is where their head is at, they're going to potentially privatize and create a mercenary army similar to the Wagner Group. So, Paulina, she gets on with Steve Bannon in the war room last night. I watch this sometimes, and she was talking about this, and I was like, what? There's no way that they're doing that. And if it isn't crazy enough, they're saying that Russia, after it leaves Crimea, which is where their head is at, they're going to potentially privatize and create a mercenary army similar to the Wagner Group. So that is the mindset of Ukraine. So why are we giving them more munitions? They think that we owe them money. And I'm going to be honest with you folks, I think that there's a lot of people in the United States who are pro supporting Russia or so pro supporting Ukraine. But I don't think that they are willing to, and that's what Zelensky is not understanding. If you join NATO, you're looking at World War III. Okay. I don't think that was ever on the table. Now, the leader of this Wagner group is Yevgeny Prigozhin. Now, he marched his forces on Moscow earlier this month in what was termed a fail coup, but I don't think it was a coup ever. It was a terrible attempted coup. I think that it was all planned, but the Russia president, Putin, um, met with Prigozhin in the following days. He didn't kill him, nothing like that, for trying to cause an insurrection. I don't think it was an insurrection. I think it was all planned. And I think that they created a conflict between Prigozhin and this other military defense leader in Russia to try to create some sort of idea that there is a tension within the Russian military ranks, but there wasn't. And perhaps the United States got involved. We paid for Prigozhin to go cause an insurrection. Um, but really, what we did was just give Prigozhin a bunch of money because he informed Putin that that was the plan to kind of cause an insurrection and then collect, I think it was $6.2 billion, that accounting error that we had. So that was my whole take with the failed coup, where he was going to go up to Moscow and overthrow Putin, which was never going to happen. Even if this whole Prigozhin versus Russia thing was real and they actually hated each other, there was no way Prigozhin was going to do that with a ragtag group of people. Um, So this mercenary military group called the Wagner Group. Now, Ukraine wants one of these, and they want Americans to pay $200 a day for this mercenary group. Zelensky has said outright that the only way he could see the war coming to a successful close is if Crimea is back under Ukraine's control. So it's all about Crimea for Zelensky. This is likely a non-starter for Russia, which overtook the region and has continued to gain territory in Ukraine. So Luna, this is a rising star in the Republican Party here in the United States. She co-sponsored a resolution to prevent cluster bombs and the use of these cluster bombs because it's a war crime. The Biden administration themselves have said that this is a war crime, but yet they're sending the cluster bombs anyway. That resolution also has the backing of Representative Matt Gaetz and Sarah Jacobs. Not only are they highly dangerous for civilians, but they have the potential to be left unexploded, and they could be dangerous to civilians years after the fact, after you deploy them. So, Matt Gaetz, he's co-sponsoring that legislation. NATO decided to not allow Ukraine to make a bid to join the alliance. Zelensky fumed over the denial, and many allies of the United States have spoken out against the deployment of cluster bombs to the zone. Though Biden, in justifying the move, let slip the country was running out of ammunition. That's why we sent the cluster bombs over. So that's a bit of an update for you when it comes to Ukraine and what's going on there. Say no to clusters. Yes. The cluster bombs, Jen Psaki herself said, was a war crime. There's over 100 different countries that have banned these things. They don't go off right away and they can detonate at a much later time, causing a problem for civilians years after the fact. So we have Luna, Anna Luna, I think is her name. She's a Paulina Luna, Anna Paulina Luna. She's a representative out of Florida. She's a congresswoman. So I'm going to play her comments here coming up. I guess Ukraine wants $200 a month from Americans to pay for this mercenary army to have something similar of that of Wagner Group. I don't know why they would want a mercenary army. I guess they want to create a privatized mercenary army to overtake Crimea, which is just not going to happen. Like, we have to be realistic about this, folks. Go ahead, smash the like button if you're listening, and be sure to share this out with your normie friends. Say no to cluster bombs. Yes, say no to cluster bombs. Now, I do want to talk about this co-sponsored legislation. She's a rising star. Her name is Anna Paulina Luna. And basically, what this legislation says is saying, hey, you can't use cluster bombs because it's a war crime, Joe. And it's not me saying it's a war crime. It's you. Your administration a year ago said that these cluster bombs should be considered an act of a crime in war. You said that. Like, Jen Psaki said that a year ago. Now, Anna Paulina Luna, she's out there this morning, and this came across the desk. I saw that she has on good authority that the Ukrainian parliament wants Americans, you, to pay $200 per day. Can you afford that right now? Can you afford $200 per day to fund a mercenary army similar to Russia's Wagner Group? They're saying that after Russia leaves Crimea, which is where their head is at, they're going to potentially privatize and create a mercenary army similar to the Wagner Group. This is supposed to help them overtake Crimea. So, speaking to Steve Bannon on the War Room, I don't know if you guys see it, Anna Paulina Luna, she's a congressman or a woman out of Florida. She revealed that during a recent visit to Poland, she heard a peculiar request from a speaker of the Ukrainian parliament. They want Americans to pay $200 every single day. Every American in the country needs to pay these $200 a day because it's our, quote, obligation, according to Ukraine. Then they went even further and they said, so we can defend the Western world from Russia. So they're also saying they want more F-35s. They're saying that that would be almost a stipend we pay Ukraine for defense of us against Russia. That's what that's what these jokers are talking about right now. So let's take a listen to Anna Paulina Luna here coming up in just a minute. And then a little bit later, I do want to get to the coach who's been raping unconscious boys for 20 plus years. And we only just found out after he left his cell phone at a restaurant. He's in police custody. He's in Nashville. I'm going to get to that story because he is the scumbag of the year. But first, let's take a listen to Anna Paulina Luna on Steve Bannon's The War Room talking about how the Ukrainian parliament wants you to pay $200 a day because you have an obligation to Ukraine for protection. And this is how you're going to pay for protection. Here we go.
Dangerous for civilians and children. But exactly as mentioned, even on this mainstream media network that you were just played the clip of, I mean, there is a potential that these will be unexploded ordnance and that there will have to be a massive demining effort afterwards. So not only is it crazy, but let me just tell you about a conversation that I had with the speaker of the Ukrainian parliament when I was in Poland on a CODEL, okay? They want to not only demand that Americans pay $200 every single day, every American in the country, because it is our quote unquote obligation, according to Ukraine, so that they can defend the Western world from Russia. But they're also saying that they want F-35s. And if that isn't crazy enough, they're saying that after Russia leaves Crimea, which is where their head is at, they're going to potentially privatize and create a mercenary army similar to the Wagner group. So that is the mindset of Ukraine. Why are we giving them more munitions? Meanwhile, we have the Hunter Biden investigation that was tied to, remember, Burisma and a Ukrainian oligarch. Are we supposed to be there? Absolutely not. Do we need to continue to fund this war? Absolutely not. And that's exactly why I'm sponsoring this resolution.
Why in the world? Why is their head in this space thinking that? And he's gone on record before, folks, and he has said that he wants to take Crimea. That's President Zelensky. Zelensky has said outright that the only way he could see the war coming to a successful close is if Crimea is back under Ukraine's control. That's likely not going to happen because Russia has overtaken the region of Ukraine and has continued to gain territory in Ukraine. And just a reminder what the Wagner Group is. It's a private military group. They were operating on behalf of Russia. Now, they took the Ukrainian city of Bakhmut earlier in the conflict before handing it over to Russian troops. So Yevgeny is the guy who runs the Wagner Group. His name is Yevgeny Prigozhin, and he's marched his forces on Moscow earlier this year. They said that it was going to be a coup against President Putin and that they were going to overthrow Putin. Look, folks, I think Prigozhin was in on it the whole time. I think that he was paid probably by the Ukrainian government or the United States government de facto to go and cause an insurrection. But I think he was in on it the whole time because this was a lame attempt at a coup if I ever saw one. This was a ragtag group of people who were marching on Moscow. They never made it up to Moscow. So that's what the Wagner Group is. I guess Ukraine wants one of them, and they want you to pay $200 a day to get that. And like she said, Matt Gaetz, Sarah Jacobs, they've got this co-sponsored legislation out there to try to prevent these cluster bombs from being used by the Biden administration. Why? Because, the Biden administration a year ago said that it's a war crime to use these cluster bombs. And like she said, These things are dangerous for civilians and children because a lot of the times these cluster bombs don't go off and they detonate at a much later time and they can explode uh, just regular people passing by it years after the fact. So this is all after NATO, um, all of this. And then we have NATO on top of all of this deciding to not allow Ukraine to make a bid to join the alliance. Zelensky fumed over the denial. Many allies of the United States have spoken out against the deployment of these cluster bombs to a war zone, though Biden, in justifying the move, let it slip that the country, Ukraine, is running out of ammunition. So I don't know. It feels like Ukraine is on the ropes here. NATO has said, no, you're not joining us. I don't think Zelensky quite understands if Ukraine joins NATO, they can, I think it's Article 5 or something of the NATO agreement where you have to back people within within the NATO organization. And essentially what that would do is lead us towards World War III. So yeah, there's a good reason why I don't think NATO is allowing Ukraine into the alliance. So I do want to switch gears. I am live in studio. If you guys want to text in 309-451-9299. You can also comment, be a part of the show, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Rumble. I'm on all of your streaming platforms. First, let's talk about the scumbag of the year. So I'm going to keep the voting open until December of 2023, but I think we have our winner of 2023 Scumbag of the Year. If there's a worse candidate than this guy who raped minors over the course of 2 decades and walked around with the evidence on his phone, if there's somebody worse than this guy, I'm going to set my computer on fire and I'm just going to lose it because there can't be anybody worse than this guy. Now, I guess I have to say allegedly because he hasn't been convicted of this crime yet, but allegedly, Camilo Campos, I don't know his name, Camilo, he's in Nashville police custody now. Now, police say that Campos, he is a soccer coach who allegedly targeted nearby school playgrounds, and he recruited children to play on his soccer team. He is now being accused of raping boys as young as 9 years old over a 20-year span. That's how long he's been raping these boys, and there's 2 reasons why this is only being discovered now that this guy has been doing this. The first is that many of these boys were unconscious, according to the evidence found on the cell phone, that a lot of these boys might not even know they were raped while they were unconscious. But the second one is that this guy actually left his phone at the restaurant. And yes, a soccer coach who recruited children at a playground and has raped them when they were unconscious for the past 20 years, over a 20-year span, has been allegedly walking around with that evidence on him this entire time in his pocket. So the restaurant workers, how did they come across the evidence? They went through the phone to try to see if they could find out who to return it to because he left his phone at a restaurant. What they found instead was dozens of unconscious boys being raped on video, pictures. 10 victims in total were found on the phone, many of whom they are believed to have no idea that this happened to them because they were unconscious. Now, 3 of them have been identified, but 5 of them have yet to come forward. So this is tragic. This is terrible, disgusting. This guy is the scumbag of the year. Campos is believed to have groomed kids, brought them to his home, drugged them, raped them. He's being charged with rape of a child and sexual exploitation of a minor, though I expect multiple counts will be added after these victims come forward, if they ever come forward. I'm sure that there's going to be some time added to his sentence. I hope he gets a life sentence. Honestly, I hope he gets the needle, or I hope he is let out in general population with a sign around his neck talking about what he did, like a sign that lays out what he did. I think that would be appropriate punishment if he was let out in general population with a sign indicating what he has done. This is disgusting. So, scumbag of the year. Now, I do want to switch gears here and talk about the GOP presidential candidates. Don't get me wrong. You know, I'm a right wing extremist, right? Your right wing extremist radio host prefers it when progressive wackadoodles get owned, and they totally just are owned by people on the right. Okay. I love it when progressives are told that they're wrong, and it's like so clear that they have been burned by a Republican. I love it. But the conservative American voter in me, I do like this on occasion, talking and listening and attempting to find common ground. I really appreciate when we can find common ground on some things. And Vivek Ramaswamy, in this clip from an Iowa event, is going viral because he decided to not own this progressive wackadoodle, and not try to make her look silly, even though it's very easy to make progressives look silly because they stand for nothing. But Vivek Ramaswamy, in this clip that I'm going to play for you on the other side of the break, instead of being mean, instead of shutting this progressive down, he actually tries to find common ground with her. And I think that this is really cool. And I think that other candidates should start to pay attention to this exchange, because I think that there's a place for it. I'm going to be back here on the other side. This is the Morning Buzz. The Mad Chatter. Hey, thanks so much for tuning in. If you guys are watching right now, please go ahead, smash that like button. I like the Mad Chatter. Where do you think, or where do the leaders over there think that the money comes from for Americans? Exactly. Now I actually ran into a counter with somebody who was a refugee, not really a refugee. There's legal definitions to the refugee status, right? You have to be fleeing a country of war times. When I asked this man if he was going to back or would be willing to go back to his country, he said, yes, I would be willing to go back to my country. And I even asked him, I said, knowing what you know now about the United States, would you go back to your home country? Would you have even attempted to come to the United States illegally over the border? And he said, no, I wouldn't have. I wouldn't have done this. I would have stayed home because he's out there on the streets panhandling. He's out there begging for money. And he says, knowing what I know now, I would not have come to the United States. So when people say that, that clearly means they're not a refugee. It clearly means that they're not seeking asylum here in the United States from a war torn country. So a lot of times, what people do, they come over here for better opportunities. Okay. So when I asked him, how's it going begging here on the street corner? He looks at me and he says, actually, not all that well. He goes, I thought Americans were supposed to be more charitable. I thought they were way more charitable than what is going on right now. I mean, they're not, and he says that they all have plastic on them. And I said, yeah, no cash. And that's the thing. Americans don't have money. Now we have a land of opportunity, and it affords us the ability to make something of ourselves. I'm not going to sit here and, um, trash America. I do think it's a great country. However, many Americans are deeply in debt, and they use plastic, and they overspend, and they live outside of their means. So that's what Americans do. We're afforded that opportunity because of things like credit. Um, Money isn't real here in the United States. So I like what the Mad Chatter here has to say. And I don't think a lot of people in other countries realize that, they hear about all of the cool things that we have here in America, but I don't think that they realize that a lot of Americans overspend, and they live outside of their means. And I don't think that they understand what that truly means, because They're not the types of countries that have things like credit, that have things like big student loans or big, loans for these big old SUVs. Like, that's just something that they don't do in their countries, and I don't think that they understand that that's not ours. Like, a lot like, you might not even own your home. You might not own your car. You might finance. You might, have a credit card where you pay for your groceries every day, and then you have a nice job that, pays off that credit card, and you might be a paycheck to paycheck type person. Um, Now that doesn't mean that you can't, manage your debt in a way that is um, like it is possible to manage your debt and to make a living and to make money. But that is a very small portion of Americans. Not a lot of Americans are a paycheck to paycheck kind of basis. And I don't think that people really understand that. Definitely not the leaders. I don't even think the people of those countries understand where Americans get their money, because Americans get their money from credit cards, from loans, and from things like that. Like, technically, we're all kind of homeless, which is interesting to think about, because you don't own your home. The bank loans you money to stay in your home, and you have like a 30, 40 plus year mortgage, right? So it's not like you have a home either. So a lot of times these people, think, and we're very fortunate in that sense as Americans. But a lot of what these people think in these different countries is that all of the houses, all of the cars, everything that we finance is ours, and that's just not true. It's the government's. So it's the governments, it's the big banks, it's the banks. So I don't think a lot of people understand that, but I like that mad chatter. We are going to be back. I'm going to be talking about Vivek Ramaswamy here in just about 5 seconds. There was a pro-abortion activist, but I don't think she really was a pro-abortion activist. And she starts screaming at Vivek Ramaswamy at this Iowa event. I mean, this headline, it just bothers me, folks. We have Justice Sonia Sotomayor. She's leveraging taxpayer-funded travel to go promote her books. So she's got this memoir, she's got some children's books, and she's earned over $3.7 million since she's joined the court in 2009. And her salary is well over $200,000, near $300,000. And she has been leveraging taxpayer-funded travel to promote her books. While other justices have also earned here additional income through their own literary deals, no other justice comes close to Sotomayor, and this raises a lot of ethical concerns in the Supreme Court. For Justice Sonia Sotomayor, her staffers to repeatedly use taxpayer-funded um, staff, I mean, they are a taxpayer funded court staff, to perform tasks like prodding public institutions for the justice's book ventures. So we're using taxpayer funded court staff to book her deals and to book her book ventures at all these public institutions. So those public institutions are also using your taxpayer dollars, just to garner this justice millions and millions of dollars in extra income. That's the type of people we're dealing with here, folks. 309-451-9299. You can always text in, be a part of the show. Now, I like to do some good news stories. I know that I took the break and we were talking about Vivek Ramaswamy. I am going to get to this clip. She sounds like a pro-abortion activist who is going viral because she interrupts Vivek Ramaswamy at this Iowa event. And don't get me wrong, I think it's awesome when you own these progressive wackadoodles and you shut them down. But Vivek Ramaswamy does something a little different here, and I think that other candidates need to pay attention to it. And Vivek was very quick to let this person speak. The crowd booed her. I am going to get to this viral clip, and I want to talk about it here coming up in just a bit. Plus, Megan Rapinoe, hands down the most insufferable specimen in the sporting world. But she's blaming the comedian Dave Chappelle for all the verbal abuse against trans people in America. Wow. Somehow this ties into people wanting to protect girls' sports. There's people like Riley Gaines. There's a 16-year-old out of Springfield who is wanting to protect women, protect girls in female sports. They don't want to look at male genitalia in the girls' locker room. They don't want to compete against a man who has a physical advantage over them. And Megan Rapinoe is out there saying that, Dave Chappelle making jokes about trans people directly leads to violence, whether it's verbal or otherwise. It's violence against trans people. Come on, Megan, relax. This woman is supposed to be retiring. She's not going out quietly. So she is going after Dave Chappelle this morning. I am going to get to that. Vivek Ramaswamy. Plus, this story, let's get to it. It's a flower farmer, and he's paying it forward by planting it forward. So here's the story coming across the desk this morning. It's a good story, a good news story for your Wednesday, 7:28 a.m. Back in 2010, a farmer in Washington named Deanna realized that she had more late blooming sweet peas than she could use. So she collected the blossoms in mason jars, loaded the jars into a wagon with her kids, and delivered the blossoms to a long-term care facility. With that simple gesture, she created a connection in her community and launched a mission to spread happiness by continuing to share seeds and flowers around the world. So Deanna created a charity group. It's called the Growing Kindness Project. So over the past decade, the organization has helped others to cultivate connections in their communities by growing and giving flowers. Isn't this sweet? So the Growing Kindness project here now has over 2,000 members. So this has really grown. It started out with her just delivering some mason jars to a long-term care facility. Now it's grown to 2,000 members with people from all over the world. They've been growing flowers and donating them to people in need of a boost. So Deanna, she still sells flowers and hosts workshops, but her charity work takes up a lot of her time. It's gotten to the point where she donates the majority of her flowers to local food banks and long-term care facilities, giving an average of 500 arrangements per season. So she makes arrangements for people. She gives them to the food banks, long-term care facilities. Now, Deanna, she's excited to see her charity group grow. Quote, this is what she says: if you have a little bit of dirt and a big heart, you have what it takes to grow kindness in your community. What you have is enough. Who you are is enough. Start where you are, use what you have, do what you can, and it really does have the opportunity to make a huge impact. So that's really cute. I thought that was a kind story. I guess it's called the Growing Kindness Project. I've never heard of it, but it's growing, growing, growing. 2,000 members. It's kind of a big deal. Go Deanna. Be a Deanna day. Maybe grow something. I mean, it is going to be kind of stormy, cloudy out there today. Maybe today's not the greatest day to go out there and pick some flowers, but maybe grow some flowers for somebody today. I don't know. 309-451-9299. Like I said, we're going to be back talking about Vivek Ramaswamy, how he deals with this pro-abortion activist who is screaming at him at this Iowa event. And then a little bit later, we're going to talk about Megan Rapinoe. But next, it's Scott's Takes on the Morning Buzz. Scott Robbins right over there. This is Scott's takes. Megan Rapinoe. I didn't know that she was like a lingerie model. She was also like a Subway spokesperson, but she
Oh, I
failed
knew
at
that.
both. So
I didn't know the lingerie model. I didn't know that.
yeah, so they nixed Victoria's Secret. They took all of the lingerie models. They said, nope, we're not going to use you. We're going to use Megan Rapinoe. But that didn't last very long because then Victoria's Secret stopped selling lingerie. So they got rid of all of the models in order to be more inclusive, I guess. I don't know. Is Megan Rapinoe like some sort of lesbian or something? Is she trans? No.
No,
I don't know.
she's not
I can't
trans.
keep up.
She is, in fact, a lesbian. No, yes.
Oh, okay.
She reminds us of that frequently. Now, and again, you may remember her as she's very obnoxious, but she was moaning and complaining during her time as a member of the U.S. national women's soccer team with discrimination and inequality because the men's team, which, by the way, brings in goo gobs more money, was paid more than them. It was essentially what the WNBA was crying about. They didn't make as much as the NBA, and the NBA is going, hey, wait a minute. Here's the reason why that doesn't happen, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
I've got the numbers here, Scott. The women's team?
Yeah, the soccer team.
They averaged over like a little over 7,000 attendees per game in 2022. And then the men's team, get this, 21,000 attendees. You're looking at 3 times the amount of people who come to watch the men.
And, look, man, my sister was a college athlete. I've got granddaughters that were athletes. And currently still an athlete. But I'm all for it. I'm not condemning women's sports. I think it's a very important, cool thing. You can be involved in the team thing. But this whole notion that all of a sudden, because you've got pick an NBA player, right? Pick any NBA player. That you've got a guy who's making all this money and I'm not, and I'm in the WNBA, and I'm looking around going, you got 800 people at your game. There's a reason for that, right? You can't subsidize butts in the seats for very long and expect it to work. So this is part of the problem. But Megan Rapinoe has 2 things going for her. She's, by the way, I think one of the unhappiest people on the planet. She's always angry. She's always pissed off about something, right? Now she's mad at Dave Chappelle. Now, Dave Chappelle, of course, has been very outspoken on the trans thing, going, hey, I don't get it, and whatever, I'm not going to do this. And I'm paraphrasing Dave Chappelle here. But that's essentially what he said. He did it in a very comedic way. And now Megan Rapinoe comes on and goes, Dave Chappelle should be condemned because what he's saying is causing violence within the trans community. Again, not bringing any receipts whatsoever, just saying it, right? She's got no proof that any of this has actually happened or based on anything Dave Chappelle says in his act, right? Mm-hmm. So Martina Navratilova is like, what? What are you talking about? Now, Martina Navratilova is a lesbian. Very outspoken, though, on the trans thing, saying this just isn't fair. Men and women cannot compete in the same sport together. There's differences in the body, and can go into the whole thing, and you guys already know what I'm talking about. So, of course, Rapinoe now is angry, and people now are angry at Martina. And it leads me to this question, and I've been asked this question before, time and time again. And I'll ask you the same question, Kat. I don't know how you feel about women's soccer. I generally cheer for the uniform when it comes to Olympics or World Cups or things like that. I cheer for the uniform. I'm the USA. Hey, great. Let's cheer for the USA. I have a hard time cheering for anything she's involved with.
Yeah.
I have a hard time with that. And it's got nothing to do with the other women on the team. They didn't say it. She did. She's the lightning rod for the team, but she's the face of the team. And I keep thinking, can I do this? Can I cheer for these guys? And I get back to the same thing. No, I can't. And I hate myself for that because I've been asked this a few times before about musical artists. Like, can you still be a fan of that? And sometimes I think I'll say, well, I can separate the music from the idiocy of whatever the artist is, right? Or actor or whatever, right? But I'm finding it more and more difficult as time goes on. I feel like I'm supporting something that they don't even like me.
No.
These people don't even like me. So what am I doing supporting them, right? So that leads me to that question all the time. And so, and I hate to say it. When the women's soccer team gets to the pitch, I guess I'm just going to be beige on the whole thing. I don't care. Win, lose, or whatever.
Yeah.
I'm not cheering for you. I'm not going to cheer against you. You're going to do what you do and be done with it.
Yeah,
So maybe
I
that's where
wonder
I
what
stand on this.
Rapinoe is going to do in her post-soccer life, because she is
Well,
supposed to be retiring, but she's like, she's ruining it for the rest of the team
Right,
because she's
right.
not going out quietly.
No,
So
well, she
here
can't.
she is, she's entering the public eye and she's still complaining about Dave Chappelle. It's like, just go away. Like, you've
Once you-
already damaged this team enough.
Once you get a hold of the spotlight, no matter what it is, it's an aphrodisiac for these people.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they cannot let it go. They don't want to let it go, and they're desperately clinging to it. And they'll say things and do things just to get the attention. We've seen this with artists up and down, whether they're athletes or whether they're musicians or whatever they are. They'll do something outrageous and nutty to get themselves back into the spotlight again. And so I don't think she's ever going to go quietly. I mean, I don't think she's capable of it. But it just makes it very, very difficult as a fan that traditionally cheers for the USA uniform to not like it, to go, I'm not going to do that anymore. So I've decided just to take the place of like, if they win, they win. If they lose, they lose. I'm not going to lose any sleep over it, but I won't support it either. So that's where I leave it. Okay. But the whole fighting thing with comedians, dude, I mean, the whole idea of comedians is to look at the world and mock it. To take the outrageous to the next extreme, whatever that is. I mean, guys like Bill Burr do it. Dave Chappelle does it. There's some good ones out there. Richard Pryor made a career out of it. I mean, golly. Sorry, so let's move on to Mamala, shall we?
Mm-hmm.
Now, I don't know what this was all about. This was something to do with Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg, and the idea that I guess that they're working diligently 24/7 feverishly on transportation, and Pete's really a hardworking guy. He's in there working. And so Kamala's at this event and she makes this pronouncement about transportation. In case you were wondering, here we go.
And I again want to thank the Secretary for your work. This issue of transportation is fundamentally about just making sure that people have the ability to get where they need to go. It's that basic. And I again want to thank the Secretary.
What?
What is it with her? I mean, seriously, what is it with her? Why is she allowed to do anything unscripted?
Mama.
Now is the moment we need to take the train. The moment is like no moment before, and no moment that is yet to come. The train makes all the transportation important, just as it has in the past. It will in the future, because of your hard and diligent work. I mean, better to remain silent, right? I cannot for the life of me understand that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't. So there's Mamala, and again, this is way out over your skis type stuff, right? But she does it anyway.
And I just don't know, like you say all the time, it's like, oh, why does she think everything she says is super profound? I don't know.
Well, and that's the thing. I mean, I think she believes anyway, that everything she says will someday be etched upon on a mountain or in history books or whatever. She's that important. And it just comes off as this nonsense like that. What is that? I mean, what does that even mean? I mean, this cabinet is full of these people, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just full of them right now. So there's our gal, Kamala Harris. And this, and let me just say this too. I've heard this too I had a friend of mine who's a liberal who said to me, you know what they're doing, don't you? They want Biden out. They're working on getting Biden out right now.
Mm-hmm.
They're turning on him. This whole cocaine thing and the stumbling and the bumbling and the mess that he is. And everybody knows this guy's not capable. It's not up for the job. Everybody knows, if you're being honest with yourself, that doesn't mean you're going to vote for a Republican. That just means that everybody knows what's going on. That what's really at play here is to get Kamala. And I'm like, Kamala can't win an election. Can Kamala win an election? He said, oh, the suburban women will vote for her, and the minorities will too.
Well, I think they're taking both Joe Biden and Kamala Harris out, because there was that whole like oddly specific report done by MSNBC where they were like, the cocaine is where the vice president parks her car. And I was like, ooh, that's oddly specific. Are they throwing Kamala Harris under the bus? But then I think this whole cocaine story might have been a cooked up thing to try to get Kamala Harris and Joe Biden out of there. I don't know.
Do you think they're greasing the wheels for a run by Governor Hair Gel Newsom?
Oh yeah. I think Governor Gavin Newsom is like waiting. He was in Idaho. I think there's like some sort of Idaho like
Yeah.
caucuses or something like that. And I think he was there trying to say that books are being banned in Idaho. And I think he's waiting for the words to be said. And due to medical reasons, I'm stepping out of the race. And then there,
Right.
insert Gavin Newsom. So
And,
I don't know.
well, and you may very well be right about that. I mean, I've thought about it several times. Like, what is this guy doing? I mean, he's traveling around the country. He's in, by the way, only Gavin Newsom can talk about how awful it is in the U.S. when his state is hemorrhaging people, is crime riddled, is feces riddled. I mean, his state's a disaster. This guy wants to be president. Wow. I told you yesterday, I guess we talked a little bit about this. Georgia State Rep Misha Maynor. Have you read her story yet?
No.
Decided to switch from the Democratic Party to the Republican Party.
Oh yeah, I heard about this, but I didn't
apparently
know the
school
story.
choice was the triggering issue for her.
Hmm.
Like, she's very much in favor of school choice, and she said, I just can't do this anymore. She said in a statement, "My name is Representative Misha Maynor. Today, I made a decision to leave the Democrat Party. I represent a blue district in the city of Atlanta. So this wasn't a political decision for me. It was a moral one. I will never apologize for being a black woman with a mind of my own." That was her parting shot on the way out. And she's like, these people are out of their minds right now.
I
I can't be part of this party
more.
anymore.
Like Tulsi Gabbard, she left.
Yeah. No. Again, go woke, go broke.
Go woke.
It's an easy thing to remember, isn't it? And it's so true. Anyway, all right, Kat, have a great. Hey, is it raining? Is it raining yet? I haven't even looked outside yet. Is it raining?
Kind of. I think it's like about ready to drizzle here. I saw some lightning in the clouds this morning. So
there you go. All right. Well, be careful out there. I'll talk to you tomorrow. See ya.
Talk to you tomorrow. Scott Robbins will be on later today, folks. Speaking about lightning, stay out there. There is a threat of lightning this summer, more so, according to the National Weather Service. I've got that story here coming up in just a bit. But Scott Robbins tonight, Markley, Van Camp, and Robbins. You won't want to miss them at 8 o'clock on Cities 92.9. Testing, testing. All righty. We are going to be visiting with Jeannie Ives. She's from Breakthrough Ideas. She's the founder of Breakthrough Ideas. Jeannie Ives, we're doing a quick test for
All
our
right.
listeners here. Hi, hi, hi. All right,
Great.
guys, let me know in the comments if you can hear Jeannie Ives. Jeannie, how's your morning?
Very good. How's my audio?
Audio's
hear me?
good. Brightness
Okay,
is good. I
perfect.
think it sounds
Good.
good on my end. Let me know in the comments if you guys can't hear Jeannie. We're going to be back here in like 50 seconds. Some topics that we're going to run through, guys, for you watching on the Facebook live stream, YouTube, Rumble, Twitter. We're going to run through this YMCA story where this 16-year-old girl, and I know we're supposed to be getting a press conference with the Illinois Freedom Caucus. What day is that, Jeannie?
That is tomorrow. Yep, 1 p.m. at Rotary Park, which is just across from the Springfield YMCA, and it's in Springfield. Yes.
Yeah, and Riley Gaines, she actually posted something to her TikTok. It's gaining all kinds of traction. And she has said that this 16-year-old girl was booted off the team.
Mhm.
Now, what I find interesting is that the YMCA is denying that.
That's
So-
right. Yeah. So hopefully that gets a little bit settled out at the press conference, because the family does plan on speaking. I believe the girl has a prepared statement. And what also is interesting is that the 16-year-old's older sister actually swam with Riley Gaines at the University of Kentucky, and also swam against Leah Thomas. So I think that's part of the reason this has gotten national attention. We're thrilled about that, because we think this is a defining issue in our culture at this time. And I think that your listeners should know that they ought to check out their own park district. We have the same problem right up here in our park district, where they have sexually integrated the bathrooms. And so there's a lot to talk about this topic.
All right, we're going to be back in about 30 seconds. Just hang out a quick second. Jeannie Ives from Breakthrough Ideas. We'll be back. Good morning, folks. This is the Morning Buzz. We have so much to get to. Now, one thing I do want to run through again is the scumbag of the year. Now, he's a coach and he's based out of Tennessee, and this story just made my jaw drop. The coach had been raping unconscious little boys for 20 years, and we're like, okay, where was this guy? Why wasn't he brought forward to the authorities sooner? Why was he allowed to do this for 20 years? Well, we finally got his phone at a restaurant. So some restaurant employees found his phone. They were looking through his phone to try to return it to somebody, and they found all of the evidence. And they found evidence of him raping unconscious boys for the last 20 years, this sick soccer coach. We're going to get to that story, plus Vivek Ramaswamy. He got interrupted at an Iowa event by a lunatic. So he had to handle the situation. And I think the way he handled this should be noted and studied by other GOP presidential candidates. Now, me being the right-wing extremist radio host, I love it when we completely own and destroy progressives, because they stand for nothing and they always will stand for nothing. But I think that there is room for places or for things like this where Vivek Ramaswamy actually sits and he tries to listen, and he lets this woman just vent to him. And we find out that she actually doesn't hold these beliefs like she is screaming about. So we're going to play that clip, the Vivek Ramaswamy clip, after we visit with, you know her, you love her. She is my favorite guest, Jeannie Ives. She's the founder of Breakthrough Ideas. Go check it out, Breakthrough Ideas. I try to sit down and watch her Facebook Live. She goes live on Breakthrough Ideas on Facebook, and she goes through a lot of Springfield legislation, and I find it super helpful. She's also a West Point graduate, veteran, and mother of 5. Jeannie Ives, thanks so much for joining me here on the Morning Buzz.
Well, thanks for having me on.
Awesome.
You're such a great radio host.
No. I try. We try. You can thank my black coffee for that. My coffee, it's already bone dry at this point. I gotta have a lot of energy to talk about the news of the day, specifically this story, folks. YMCA denying that this girl is telling the truth about being kicked from her swim team because she was uncomfortable around a man, a grown man. She's a minor girl, 16 years old, out of Springfield, Illinois. She was going to the YMCA, and apparently she was being forced to dress or um, change in this locker room with a man. Now, there was a communications director, and he went on the record saying that, well, she could have used like the handicap bathrooms or like the, all gender bathrooms. So, Jeannie, what do you think about the communications director denying this? We've only got about a minute left of this segment, but we're going to continue it on the live stream and in the 8 o'clock hour. But what do you think just generally about the YMCA communications director coming out and denying this girl's story?
Well, I think it's nonsense because why should the 16-year-old girl have to use the family bathroom, and that's her ticket into the swim pool, when they're letting instead these trans men come in and destroy the idea of a girl's private space, a girl's bathroom. So, I mean, that's no way to settle this issue out, but that's what they're saying. No, she could have just done this other alternative. No, these guys could have done the other alternative. And that's where there's a little bit of conflict in the story. But she was definitely kicked off of the swim team by the coach after her and another girl on the swim team posted some posters that just said, biological women only, safe sport. So, I mean, that's why apparently she was kicked off the swim team.
We're going to be back with this story and with Jeannie Ives. We're going to continue the conversation exclusively on the YouTube live stream, Twitter, Facebook, Rumble. I'm there. Join us on the live stream. Jeannie Ives joins me from Breakthrough Ideas. They're the folks who broke this story about the Springfield swimmer who was kicked from the team because she didn't want to look at male genitalia. I'm going to be right back. All right, Miss Jeannie Ives. I know. Thanks so much, guys, for tuning in to the live stream. I so do appreciate it. We bounce back and forth between the radio for our radio friends and for our live stream friends. Jeannie Ives joining me. We were talking about the YMCA story. There's so many different things.
Yes.
So Riley Gaines has picked this story up. You were telling me some information about how she picked it up and why it's gaining so much national attention.
Well, this particular swimmer, the 16-year-old, actually, her name is Abigail Wheeler. We know that now. Her father actually is also a swim coach, but her older sister, Caitlin, swam with Riley Gaines at the University of Kentucky. And so there is a nexus to that extent, and that's how Riley learned about the story as well. And, once she posted up on Twitter, the story that we wrote, because we feel like when I found out about this issue and that the Illinois Freedom Caucus members were holding a press conference outside the YMCA, I said, listen, it's not going to get a lot of coverage if we don't write the story. People need to know exactly what's going on. So our cultural writer at Breakthrough Ideas, Lori Higgins, wrote the story. She did a great job, as she always does. And the story just went viral because you have to put it in context. You have to tell people exactly what's going on. You can't simply put out a press release. So that story got picked up, and then the flyer got picked up about the press conference by Riley Gaines. And I mean, I think on our website, we've had, 65,000 reads on the story, 62,000, something like that. And it's been viewed on her Twitter feed over 4 million times. You know why? Because this is a national story, and people are outraged that a 16-year-old would be kicked out of the swim team for opposing having men in the women's bathroom. I mean, just it's nonsense, and it all has to stop.
Yeah. And I think it's a great thing that we're starting to draw. I feel like, you being from the Midwest, I mean, Jeannie Ives, you've run for, you were a former state rep, you ran for governor. I mean, your home is Illinois,
Yes.
right? You've represented the good people of Illinois. And I feel like we are constantly overlooked being here in the Midwest. The Rust Belt is overlooked, the Midwest, and you can see that all of our manufacturing has gone left, right? There's a lot of empty buildings, and I just ask you to just look at small towns we've got Colfax, we've got Lexington, which Spencer Johansson, he's the mayor there, and he's really built out Lexington here in central Illinois. And there's all kinds of different communities that have just died over the years. So we are constantly overlooked here in the Midwest. And I think it's just because people know how corrupt Illinois is that nothing will ever get better. And they've said, well, Illinois is a lost cause. And that's why things never get better for Illinoisans. Pertaining to like issues that Governor J.B. Pritzker, where this is nothing new it is a big deal because I don't want to dismiss Abigail's story, but it's like this happens in every community. There are kids who are going to public schools in the state of Illinois where they are using kitty litter boxes in their bathrooms. Like this is what kids have to deal with when they go in and go out every single day. And it's just like it constantly gets dismissed, I think, because we live in Illinois and people just know, oh yeah, that like Illinois is just corrupt and there's no helping them.
There's a lot to talk about here. First of all, Illinois is a great state. We are the hub of interstate, commerce, quite frankly. We have the second most railroad lines miles out of any other state. We have all this fresh water coming in from Lake Michigan. We're not water poor. We've got the richest soil, really, that you can find in the world. We've got world-class universities, medical facilities. We've, got 34 Fortune 500 companies. You could go on and on and on about all the advantages that the political class has absolutely destroyed in the state. And sure, is everything going to go away? No, it's really hard to move your business. It's really hard to move your family. And so it's not all going to go away, but we're all going to just suffer more hassle, more taxes. And eventually, though, all of this commerce will recede. It will go to our borders. And so, and part of this is the cultural issues that are going on. During COVID, families moved because they wanted their kids in sports. They wanted their kids in person learning. And so they actually did pick up and move. People will move for their families, just like this cultural issue. People will leave the state. And because they see no leadership fighting back. Finally, we do have some folks in the Freedom Caucus fighting back. But this is like, don't kid yourself. This is in every single school district, every single park district, practically, that is dealing with this issue. They're forcing it down our throats because they have a favorable General Assembly who will not do anything to clarify the law. And by the way, there's no reason this has to be the Human Rights Act, which a lot of folks are, using as their reason because the Human Rights Act says you can't discriminate on sex, then we have to let anybody into the restroom. That is not true. There is a large exemption for private spaces to remain sex segregated in the Human Rights Act. It's just that the court cases have not followed that statutory law.
Let's talk about that here coming up on the other side with Jeannie Ives. We are going to take a brief break and then we're going to be back for our radio friends. I like this. Illinois, the land where Lincoln is rolling in his grave. Jim, thanks so much for tuning in. We've got West Point graduate, veteran, mother of 5, Jeannie Ives. She's the founder of Breakthrough Ideas. We'll be back. They're denying that it ever happened. It didn't happen, folks. No, she's lying. The 16-year-old girl, Abigail Wheeler, she is not telling the truth about being kicked from the swim team for simply just not wanting to see male genitalia when she's changing in the girls' locker room. This is a huge story that's gained national attention. Joining me here to break it down, it's Jeannie Ives. She's a West Point graduate, veteran, mother of 5. She was a former state representative here in the state of Illinois. She ran for governor. She has Breakthrough Ideas. Breakthrough Ideas is the organization that broke the story originally here in Springfield, Illinois, where this girl was kicked from her swim team because she made known that she took issue with a transgender man changing in front of her in the girls' locker room at the YMCA in Springfield, right, Jeannie?
Yes, that is exactly what happened. And she went to her coach, and the coach essentially said, "There's nothing I can do about it." The family went to the the administration, and they're like, "There's nothing we can do about it. It would be discrimination not to allow them in." And then you have the comms director actually saying, well, we know who our transgender patrons are, so it's all okay because we know them. It's not like some unassuming male is just going to walk in and pretend to be transgender because we know our transgender men. But actually, when you erase the lines like this, when you say that you can't discriminate on sex, then you can't discriminate on sex. So literally a biological male who doesn't even pretend to be transgender or pretend to be a woman, it can walk into the female bathroom and use it all that they want to. And by the way, that doesn't mean they have to be discreet when they're in there. They can use it as if a woman would use it. And they can be open about that. And you can't do anything. And they think that that's the law in the state of Illinois. It's actually not the law, but people are misinterpreting the Human Rights Act.
So they're misinterpreting the Human Rights Act. You said that there's an exemption here, a private exemption, and it's very extensive. Can you break us through this private exemption?
Sure. Well, the Human Rights Act itself is a very lengthy article, and it covers everything from employment to, discrimination in all sorts of other parts of your life. But it has this big exemption in Section 5/5-103, and it says that this act does not apply to places that are private in nature, and it literally lists locker rooms, restrooms. And it says that those can still be discriminated based on sex. Now, what is unbelievable to me is that you actually have authorities saying, well, sex is sex. And so if the transgender guy says, well, actually, I am a woman, well, then they are that woman. So I guess the only clarifying language we need in the Human Rights Act is that sex actually means, in the exemption part, biological sex. And maybe that would clear it all up for everybody. Years ago, when this Human Rights Act was actually put into effect, we think it was in the mid 80s when it first came into effect. Everybody understood that sex meant biological sex. Well, now they're trying to get around it by saying, well, we can't discriminate because of the Human Rights Act, but in fact, you can sex segregate.
Wow. Yeah. So if a man thinks that he's a woman, and he says my gender is a woman, then he can make the argument that his sex is woman.
Yes.
And thereby, through this private spaces exemption, he is covered under there because he thinks that he is this. So the clarifying language would be needed in there to do biological sex in order to protect women.
Yeah, no, I'm not a lawyer, I don't play one on TV either, but I mean, this is the only thing that you could conceivably say that they're assuming is that the sex means however you perceive yourself to be. Because to me, the statute is very clear. Obviously, the only way we're going to solve this in Illinois is through another lawsuit that goes all the way up the chain of command. And we look at this, but I mean, first of all, just even having this conversation to me is idiotic.
Yeah.
I mean, the fact that you've got adults in positions of authority with all the PhDs you can imagine, because that's what you have in your superintendent class. They all have a PhD. They're all just like these learned people. And yet they will not even confront the lie that you cannot become this sex that you weren't born in. They won't confront the lie. The whole fundamental underlying argument here is that you can actually become another sex. Not true. That is not true.
Yeah. And Abigail Wheeler, she's this 16-year-old girl. And this story is really just taken off folks out of Springfield, Illinois, where their YMCA communications director is out there saying that this didn't happen, that this girl actually got kicked from the swim team. So she actually has a connection to Riley Gaines, which might be helping, the conversation go national from the Springfield story that Breakthrough Ideas broke. So what's that connection with Riley Gaines here?
So, yes, the 16-year-old girl, her older sister actually swam with Riley Gaines. And I'm also told that she swam against Leah Thomas, who stole that one, award from Riley Gaines. So the fake, the swimmer who pretends to be a woman who is actually like this massive man. So that is the nexus there. And so Riley Gaines picked up the story, which is great. Independent Women's Forum, I see that they put their logo on the flyer for the press conference tomorrow. By the way, there is this press conference tomorrow, Rotary Park in Springfield at 1 p.m. We encourage people to show their support. But I actually applaud the family for their courage to stand up to this nonsense. It's not easy to do this. And it's certainly not easy to do it as a 16-year-old to take this issue on. But I'm really thankful that they are.
Yeah, and well, we mentioned earlier that people leave because of the cultural issues. People don't, they dismiss that. No, people in the state of Illinois, they leave because of cultural issues. And I wouldn't blame this family for leaving, because here's their daughter working so hard to try to, I mean, this is a swim team that could lead her to scholarships, could be good for her. Like, maybe she's swimming because it's good for her academic performance, right? Sports and academic performance, they work hand in hand. And it's like, if she gets kicked from a swim team here in the state of Illinois for simply not wanting to change in front of a man in the girls' locker room, which, I mean, yes, like, duh, right? If she just gets upset about that and then gets kicked, I wouldn't blame the family for leaving and just saying, I give up. But here they are fighting it and saying, hey, no, we're going to call this out for what it is, and we're going to make a fuss really about this, because it's not right that they want her to go change in this bathroom away from her teammates, to almost act like she's the problem. This is a very small minority of people. I think it's like 7% of the population identifies as U.S. population identifies as LGBTQIA, including the ally of that. So it's like people who are allies of the gay community are also included in that statistic, which is really funny, but that they want to include people who aren't actually gay in that statistic, making that statistic much larger than what it really is. But 7% of the U.S. population, and you guys are going to force her to go into the handicap stall, or like the all gender, away from her teammates, just because you want to cater to a very small population of people. I don't understand that.
Yeah. So Katrina, you raise an interesting issue, because that's not acceptable for the transgenders to be told, hey, you need to use the single stall, all gender, family changing area. They're told that they think that that's discrimination against them. They can't be accepted as just part of the womanhood in a girls' locker room. And this is exactly what happened in the D211 case that really tipped off all of this stuff back in 2014, 15 timeframe. D211, the largest high school district in the state of Illinois, had this issue with a trans guy, trans woman, well, whatever. I get it confused a little bit here. It went all the way up through a court case. And the prescription was, look, you can use the locker room, but you must change behind a curtain. And that wasn't acceptable to them. No, I should be able to change in the open with all the girls, because that makes me feel part of the whole activity of changing in the girls' locker room, part of the crowd, part of the group, right? And so that was not acceptable. So if you allow this to happen, they don't have to change behind any curtain. There's nothing that says that they have to do that, because they can just act like any other woman would act in a changing area. So that's where they're going with this. And unfortunately, in the state of Illinois, when Katie Stewart, a shameful, uncourageous woman, a legislator, Democrat from the Madison County area, when she ran a bathroom bill this session, it got approved. And it essentially says that if a facility actually builds a multi-stall, multi-gender bathroom, then all the other bathrooms in the vicinity must also be multi-gender. So people are like, well, just build another bathroom for everybody who wants to say that they're the sex that they're not, and they can all just go in that one. So we have women's, multi-gender, men. No, can't do that. The minute you build a multi-stall, multi-gender bathroom, all the ones in the vicinity have to, because they passed stupid legislation that forces that.
I know. I actually think it was my church when we were doing our build out. They purposefully left out the multi-gender bathroom because they would have had to do all three as multi-gender. So we just have the 2 bathrooms, not a multi-gender handicap stall type thing. So, oh, incredible. Now, I do want to switch gears on you. We've been talking about the Human Rights Act. So there was something that was added to the Human Rights Act. It's that immigration status thing. So you can't discriminate against someone for their immigration status, which is essentially going to force landlords to provide rent or like approve of illegal immigrants paying rent to them. Right. So that's a huge thing that has gotten passed. I think it's signed into law. I just don't understand. At this point, you can just add anything you want to the Human Rights Act, I think. And like, do you like the color purple? Well, if you like the color purple, then we're going to add you to the Human Rights Act, and people can't discriminate against you because you like the color purple. Right?
Yeah. No, the state has gone absolutely lunatic on this stuff. So yes, so it's everything about the non-citizens, not for citizens. And this is just so harmful to landlords who need to perform background checks, need to know that, you know what, you might get caught up in an immigration issue and flee the country simply because you know that you've been, working at the landscaper and as a landscaper, and you've been working under the table, and now you're going to get caught up by immigration for not having a valid work permit, and boom, you're out of there. But we can't have a landlord, all of a sudden be left high and dry with the rent gone. We can't use that as discrimination. It's insane that is happening. There's also other sorts of things on landlords, like, the credits, credit checks. You can't work on that so much. You can't look at credit scores anymore. You can't look at income verification. I mean, they're really, really harming business and landlords' ability to protect their property. And it's their property, by the way.
Yeah, and not to mention, I rent, right? So it's like you're not only screwing the landlord, but you're screwing all the other tenants, right? If you're allowing somebody, and I'm just going to say it, I know people have given me flack for this, but it's like, it's true. Illegal immigrants, they are more prone to commit more crimes because they're here illegally. So you have to work under the table. You have to do all of these different things because you're here in the United States as an illegal immigrant, and you can't do things without doing it illegally, right? Like working in the United States, you have to be paid. That comes with, are you paying your taxes? And now you're screwing over the rest of the tenants in that building if you allow an illegal immigrant to stay there without being a citizen. So there's a lot of things that could happen with this, and it's screwing the landlords and it's screwing tenants too, because now you have a situation where we don't know anything about this person and you're allowing them to stay here. And I'm under the impression as a tenant that this is going to be a safe place for me to stay. But if you can't run background checks, you can't even, ask that the person be a United States citizen anymore.
Well, and I think it'll be hard to force occupancy laws saying how many families can be cohabitating together, in terms of that. And these illegal immigrants, I mean, they're getting all sorts of housing supports at your expense, the taxpayers' expense. We already know that that's happening. They also now, you've probably covered it, but they now have a normalized driver's license. So back when we gave illegal immigrants a driver's license, and I think that was approved in 2013 or 2011, right around that time frame, it had to look different. And it was there for the purposes of them being able to get insurance coverage and not drive illegally on the streets. Well, now they are saying that it was discriminatory to have a different looking driver's license because, I couldn't pick up my pharmacy items. I couldn't go buy alcohol or liquor easily because, the car didn't look legit. Well, now they're going to have a normalized driver's license just like you and me. And, the next thing is going to be voter fraud. Don't doubt that. and it's just wrong what we're doing here in the state of Illinois.
Jeannie Ives, we do have to take a break. Thanks so much for joining me here on the Morning Buzz. Tell me a little bit about you and breakthrough ideas and how we can help you continuing to protect these girls and to elevate the story in Springfield.
Sure. Great. So Breakthrough Ideas was founded to bring information to voters so that they make a more informed choice at the ballot box, because we don't think that people actually believe in some of the policies that are being passed. We think that they don't know enough about the policies being passed and who's passing them. So we're trying to connect the dots between policy, politicians, and the politics behind it all. And so that's what we do at Breakthrough Ideas. We're all about giving information. We particularly focus on Illinois issues. And as we do that, we look at all levels of government, though, from our Congress folks and what they're doing, made a lot on the state government. And then we do get very localized on issues as well. And Katrina, I don't know if you know, I'm going to promote it, though, but I am going to take over my own radio show on AM 560 WIND. That's going to be Sunday nights, 7 to 9 p.m. You can tune in there. And I'm hopeful that we bring some of the central Southern Illinois voices and policy ideas and concepts to the suburbs and the city where they need to hear more about these issues. And so that's my hope.
Yes. Jeannie Ives, thanks so much for joining me. And I love the 560 Answer, folks. We've had Sean Thompson on the show before. I love his show. I'm a big fan of his show as well. Jeannie, you have a great rest of your day and have a great morning.
Yes, thank you. You too.
All right, folks, we are going to be back. I do want to talk about Vivek Ramaswamy. He had some sort of disruptor and interrupter come to this Iowa event, and she's not really a pro-abortion activist like she thinks she is, but she interrupted Vivek Ramaswamy's event, and he handled the situation beautifully. I want to get to that story here next on the Morning Buzz, plus a very special guest. All right, folks, what do you guys think about Jeannie Ives joining me here on the live stream? You can go ahead, smash the like button if you're watching. Let them stay at JB's house. Yes. And then I like all of 102 counties in Illinois commit voter fraud. Yes. So, I mean, that's the thing. People are sitting there saying that voter fraud doesn't happen. Okay, if voter fraud didn't happen, then why do we have an entire manual script? Like it's a script or like a guide on how to deal with voter fraud here in the state of Illinois. It happens. So we are going to be talking a little bit about Vivek Ramaswamy. So Vivek Ramaswamy, he was in Iowa, and I'm loving Vivek more and more every day. So me being the right-wing radio host extremist that I am, I definitely prefer it when progressives get owned. These progressive wackadoodles are owned and they are told that they're being stupid. But sometimes I think, the American conservative voter in me, I do like the talking, the listening, and the attempting to try to find some common ground. I think that's fun. I think it's needed, necessary. Vivek Ramaswamy in this clip that's going viral actually tried to let this crazy person speak. So the woman at first, she sounds like a pro-abortion activist in the clip. She starts screaming. She starts saying that women are being forced to keep their baby after rape and blah, blah, blah. And the crowd was very quick to boo her, but Vivek Ramaswamy actually let her speak. So as she spoke, she said how she was already a single mother because the father had left her to raise the kid all by herself, and she was struggling, and that she didn't want another child, and that forcing her to have the baby would be problematic for her. Now, Vivek engaged her more, and she started to brag about how her kid is successful and how successful the kid is. And it ended with Vivek talking about the importance of motherhood and being a parent. So at the end of the day, folks, these people really don't believe in what they say. So here we have a single mother. Yes, she's having a tough go at it, but she's sitting there talking about how she loves her kid and how she thinks the kid is successful and stuff like that, despite not having a father in the home. She says that, she's raising the kid by herself and she's doing a damn good job. Turns out the woman is not actually a pro abortion activist because she is advocating for her kid having the successes that he has, despite, her not having the money to take care of him. So she is a voter and she's having a tough go at it and she needed a place to vent, really. Now she's absolutely crazy, lunatic, yes, and she interrupts this Iowa event that Vivek Ramaswamy is at. But I mean, at the end of the day, I don't think she really is a pro-abortionist. And then Vivek just, tries to have a conversation with her, and you start to hear what she's going through, and she's not really a pro-abortionist. Otherwise, she would have, aborted her child, or, I don't know her whole entire story, but she wouldn't be saying that, her kid has all of these successes despite all of this, right? So Vivek was matching intensities here, and had the woman been an activist looking to shut down the event, he would have dealt with her in that way. But this woman had a question about Vivek's views on being pro-life, and he gave an answer. And the woman, I think, just needed to feel heard. So this is really interesting, and I think that especially in Iowa and in states like New Hampshire, where shaking hands, kissing babies is king, retail politics is king. The candidate wins by converting one voter at a time, and this is how you do it. Vivek Ramaswamy um, perform the what he does here. I think needs to be uh, paid attention to from the other candidates. So yeah, we're going to be talking about that. I'm going to play the clip here for you. And then also, I have a special guest who's supposed to be joining me. His name is Peter. He's a crop duster, and he's going to be giving away a children's book. So staying tuned for that. Good morning, folks. Hey, this is the Morning Buzz. I've got a quick story to run through here before we get to a very special guest. His name is Crop Duster Pete, and he's going to be joining me, and we have something special for you planned here coming up in just a couple of minutes. Now, before we took the break, I was telling you a little bit about Vivek Ramaswamy and this clip that's going viral. He was at an Iowa event, and there was this interrupter, a progressive wackadoodle, who interrupts his event and starts screaming. I'm going to get to that clip coming up. Guys, I am live on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Rumble. You're going to want to see me in studio, especially coming up in a couple of seconds here, or a couple of minutes, because we are going to be talking with Crop Duster Pete. Crop Duster Pete is a very interesting guy, and he has some local ties here to Pontiac. Shout out to my peeps in Pontiac, 309-451-9299. Let's talk about it. the right-wing extremist in me, the radio host, I love it, and I actually prefer it when we shut down progressive wackadoodles for their ideas. But there is a side of me, a conservative American voter side of me, that I believe on occasion, when we start talking to and we start attempting to try to find common ground, that there is a place for that. And Vivek Ramaswamy, in this viral clip, does just that with this interrupter. You can't really hear what she's saying here in the beginning, but she starts screaming at Vivek while he's at this Iowa event. So let's take a listen. Here we go.
Reported in the US. Let her speak. We'll give her. Let me get you to finish what you have to say. Can I just say one thing? I want to give her a chance to speak. You're gonna come back here. You can say something to me. It's okay. Come back. Come on back. It's okay. Come on up. It's okay. You can ask me a question, and then I will answer. You want to ask me a question? Yes. You can do that.
If somebody non-consensually rapes me, I'm not having their child. This is my choice. It's my body. I'm already raising a kid that somebody implanted in me and doesn't take care of. The system does nothing for the single mother. There's no child support and nobody goes after them. I've been raising a child by myself for 8 years. My name is Kayla Crest.
And are you a mother?
I am a mother.
Okay, thank you.
And my kid is successful, and I don't want to be frowned upon. I don't want to be put down because I'm a single mother. My kid is healthy, happy, and successful.
Thank you, Kayla. And I want to say you're doing one of the most important things is a mother raising more children in this world. Even if we have our disagreements, I want to say thank you for that. So thank you. And part of what it means to live in this country is we have free speech. We get to speak our minds openly, even if we all don't agree on it.
Okay, so there's Vivek Ramaswamy. And the reason why I wanted to play that clip today is because I think Vivek did something really cool here where he decided to listen to this woman. And it sounds like she's not even really a pro-abortion activist. She's screaming about forcing, at first, right, a woman to keep her baby after rape, which we're not even going to get into that conversation because the amount of rapes, it's not even statistically significant to bring that into the conversation about abortion. A majority of all abortions, 97% of them come from elective abortions where women decide to kill the baby. So the crowd was quick to boo her, but Vivek was very quick to let her speak. As she spoke, she said how she's a single mom. She said that the dad left her and that she's left to raise the kid on all by herself. And, the government designs it so that way that kind of stuff happens. They want you to be miserable. And Vivek engaged her more. And then she started to brag about her kid, how successful her kid was, how what kind of great mother she is. And it ended with Vivek talking about the importance of motherhood and being a parent. So truly, I don't think this woman was a pro-abortion activist. I think she's a voter who is having a tough go at it, and she needed a place to go vent. And she decided to just go to an event where a GOP presidential candidate was. And I'm sure she probably read on the internet somewhere that an actual pro-abortion activist said that the GOP is trying to destroy her and blah, blah, blah. What Vivek did is called matching intensities. And had the woman been an activist looking to shut down the event, he would have dealt with her. But this woman was just clearly needing a place to vent. And I think that in a state like Iowa and a state like New Hampshire, in all of these states where retail politics, shaking hands, kissing babies, that is king. I think that this is the interaction you need, converting one voter at a time. And Vivek, I'm going to be interested in how he performs here in the primary. A third place is a pretty sweet spot to be in. I think that he's going to wind up surpassing Ron DeSantis here very quickly. Now, I do want to get to a very special guest, Pete. Pete is Crop Duster Pete is his name, and he's an author, actually, folks. He has a YouTube channel. He's a children's author. He has a new book called Crop Duster Pete, and it's available for pre-order on Amazon. He's sharing his love and passion for aviation with those who are interested and those who are not. So currently flying out of central Arkansas, but he has some local ties here. So tell me about your story here, Mr. Crop Duster Pete, for our Facebook Live and for our radio friends.
All right. Thanks for having me, Katrina. I'm happy to be here, and I actually just found you on Facebook, and I think we can kind of connect with your political views and your world views. So I think we got some kind of a connection here. But yeah, I originally am from Wyoming, and I started learning how to fly in Illinois. That's where I met my wife is from Illinois. We met at college. And so I moved out there, and I used to live not too far from Pontiac, and I lived in Fairbury, and that's where I started learning how to fly. And that's where I got the big idea to be a crop duster. And through a chain of events, I ended up in Arkansas, and I've been flying now for about 6 years, and I love it. It's a good gig.
Yeah. So we were on the phone earlier this couple weeks ago, and I was asking you because we have a big drought problem here. And I don't know if your wife or your family or friends here in Fairbury, Pontiac have told you about it, but in central Illinois, we're kind of in a drought season. It's getting a little better. I think we're going to get some thunderstorms today. We've had some rain. But I was curious about crop dusters and what exactly they do. Is it solely for spraying for pesticides and things like that? Or is there, or do you do some sort of watering of crops with a crop duster? Is that possible?
So to break it down, when you see us out there spraying, most of what you see coming out of the airplane is actually water. There's really only about 8, maybe 12 ounces of chemical that's going out per acre that we spray. So technically, if we're putting out 3 gallons to the acre, most of that's water. So technically, you would consider that an irrigation, a type of irrigation. I don't know of anywhere. There might be some places that they strictly do put out water with the airplane to water the crops, but I haven't heard of that. But so we do kind of do a little bit of irrigation just regularly when we spray.
So you spray down in central Arkansas. What's the differences between spraying in Arkansas and the state of Illinois? Is there a difference? And what's it like spraying out in central Arkansas?
So the big difference is our season is a lot longer, and we usually start up around mid to late February. And depending on where you're at, you could run into November. And the Illinois season is usually shorter. And then, of course, our crops down there, we have 2 additional crops rather than just soybeans and corn. So we have soybeans, corn, and we also have rice, and we also have cotton. And with rice and cotton, there's a lot of area application that goes into both those crops. And there's a lot of sensitive weed killer that we have to put out to keep the weeds down, especially in the rice.
Interesting. Now, is there a lot of regulations that you run into? Is there like regulations of what you already kind of alluded to it, 8 to 12 ounces of chemical that you actually spray. So it's not like you're going out there and like, rat poison on all of the, you know what I mean? I feel like there is a common misconception of people thinking that spraying is bad. But tell me a little bit about the regulations you face and why it's important to spray in crop dust.
Okay, so yeah, I could break that down. Just starting with the regulation side of it, every crop duster pilot is required to have an applicator, a commercial applicator license for each state that they're applicating in. Like for instance, I'm in Missouri right now helping out an operator. I had to have a Missouri commercial applicator's license. So that's that part of the regulation. Usually the aircraft has to have a license from that state, placarded on like the door or something. And then of course, when it comes to the chemicals, the EPA has a whole list of rules for each individual chemical. And there'll be like rules on how much wind can be blowing when you spray it, and certain crops that you can't spray it around. There's some that, you can't spray within a certain distance of, heavily populated areas, that kind of thing. And then of course there's rules as far as if you spray it on, say, July 30th, and they're going to harvest it on, August the 30th, you have, like, there's rules that say you have to have a certain time frame between the time it's sprayed and the time it's harvested. So that way there's no harmful chemicals in the crop when it is harvested. So as far as the regulation side, that kind of encompasses the regulation side of it. There's a few chemicals that you're required to, in Arkansas, that you're required to take a special test for, and it's pretty much that everybody's heard of dicamba, and really dicamba is just like a really, really good weed killer, but the only problem is it does like to drift and everything. So like there's special tests for that chemical. And then you asked about why it's important, and I'll tell it to you in my honest opinion, like I told you the other day on the phone, is I understand people's argument that I get on like Instagram and YouTube, where they say that you're poisoning the earth and you're hurting the environment. And I kind of get where they're coming from. And it may not be the best for the environment. But let's look at it this way. The urban areas in the world, not just in America, but we'll just take America, the urban areas are expanding. And cities are getting bigger, which means it's taking away from cropland. And now farmers are left with a job of increasing their production off of a decreased number of acres. And the only way to do that is with modern pest control methods, like spraying weed killer to keep the weeds down so they don't suck the nutrients away from the crop, or killing bugs so they don't kill the crop, putting out a fungus killer, for plant disease. Those are all things that are required in order to have a higher yield. And that's just the way it has to be, because as long as we need commercial food production, we are going to need crop dusters. The only solution to this would be everyone growing their own food and raising their own beef, their own chicken. And that's not going to happen. Maybe for some rural areas, yes, but urban areas are just growing, and they'll never be able to do that for themselves, provide their own food. So,
and they probably wouldn't want to.
Exactly. And most people, and that's the thing, is most people do not want to put that work in, and it's kind of a form of laziness. And as long as that's the case, you might think of chemical application for protecting crops to increase their yields. You can kind of think of that as kind of a necessary evil, because while it may not be the best, it's kind of our only choice right now, because without crop dusters, there would be a massive food shortage, not just in the US, but around the world.
So tell me a little bit about your children's book that you've got out there. What is it called, and why be a children's author? I mean, you're a crop duster, you're flying planes, but why come out with a children's book?
Okay, I was reading my kids a book one time, and this was several years ago, and I was reading it, and I go, this is so simple. Like, I could do this. And that kind of gave me the idea. And 2 years ago, about 2.5 years ago, I was laid up from an accident. I had a car accident, and we took a road trip or something. And while we were on the road trip, I decided, I was like, I'm going to write it. And I think I was actually driving at the time. And so I dictated it, and my wife typed it into my phone for me. And it sat in a notes file on my phone for like 2 years. And then finally last fall, my wife, when I got home from being up north, my wife said, hey, there's this publisher, you need to talk to this lady. And I hadn't even thought about, getting the book published. It had crossed my mind, but it was definitely not a priority. So we got in contact with her, and she loved the idea, and we submitted the manuscript. And like 3 weeks later, we had a publishing contract offer.
Wow, incredible. And what's the book called? What's it about?
It's called Crop Duster Pete, and it is about a day in the life of a crop duster pilot.
Awesome. Well, we are giving away one of those books today, aren't we, Pete?
Yes.
Crop Duster Pete, we're going to give those away. Folks, we want you to call in and give me a call at 309-451-9299. If you're interested in one of these children's books, we're going to mail it out to you. Crop Duster Pete, how do we find out more about you and anything else you'd like to add?
You can find more about me on Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook, mostly Instagram and YouTube, and it's just at Crop Duster Pete, all one word. And I usually post pretty frequently on Instagram and fairly frequently on YouTube. I have about 250, 260 videos on YouTube you can go watch. They're not very long, but all I got to say is I really appreciate you having me on here. And, the whole reason I wrote this book is to inspire young people to pursue a career in agriculture or aviation or both, and just to inform the general public, about what we do and the importance of, aerial application in commercial food production.
Awesome. Well, Crop Duster Pete, you have a great rest of your day. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Katrina.
we're back. And folks, we did give away that Crop Duster Pete children's book. Thanks so much to Pete for coming on the Morning Buzz. Scott's the winner. He's the mayor out of Farmer City. He won that book. We're going to be sending him a signed copy of Crop Duster Pete, that book. I'm so excited for Scott. Now, well, shout out really quick to the volunteer fire department of Farmer City. Everybody who was called out came out to this house fire. Now, there has been a shell of a house that remains. It's on Plum Street in Farmer City. I love Farmer City. But last night, somebody tragically lost their house. And pray for the folks who lived there. There is a resource center in Farmer City where you can donate. But shout out to the volunteer fire department of Farmer City. They got out there and they put out the fire, but the house is in shambles. They couldn't save the house, but they saved her. Nobody was hurt. I think that there is reports of pets being hurt in the fire, but thank God that she made it out okay. And shout out to the volunteer fire department. And if you want to donate, there is a resource center out of Farmer City. Scott, congratulations on your book. We'll be back on the other side. Will have access to the low. Good morning. Hey, thanks so much for tuning in to the live stream. I so do appreciate it. If you're watching right now, go ahead, smash that like button. We are going to be getting to this story. A scumbag of the year. So he's a coach and he had been raping some unconscious boys for 20 plus years. And you're probably wondering to yourself, okay, how in the world did this happen? Well, he was one. There was two reasons why this hasn't been found out. One of the two reasons that this is only being discovered now is that a lot of these boys were unconscious, which is so sad. And the second is that he left his phone at a restaurant. So now we finally have the evidence, but he's been keeping this evidence on his phone for 20 years. It's out of Tennessee, this story. Whew, man, it has been a packed show. I so do appreciate you tuning in. Shout out to a loyal listener. Her name is Pam Page. She's been listening, and I appreciate listening, Pam. You can text me at 309-451-9299. And if you text that number right now and you text the word summer, you're going to be in the running to try to win yourself these Knights Action passes. Now, Knights Action, it's out in Springville. It is a cool place. They've got miniature golf. They've got a driving range. They have Splash Kingdom. So we have passes to give away. All you have to do is text the word summer, SUMMER, to 309-451-9299. And those passes are available and valid throughout the summer.